that you need to go out and get some of this on the table, I don't fault you. So anyway, what we're going to do today, that we just call this class Working with the White Metals, because if you use this title in your description, nobody will come to the class. And so basically what it is, it's the principles of thermodynamics and thermal transfer in white metal jewelry applications with a side of metal movement at the molecular level.
I need to
I'm telling y'all, I'll give you the heads up. All right, so we've got about an hour to cover about 2 hours worth of material. At any point, if you have any question or anything like that, just get my attention. I'll stop what I'm doing. So we're going to start this off with 3 videos. Oh, I hope I don't pull the wrong video from the hotel thing last night. All right, here we go.
Is it triple X?
That's what I'm hoping. All right. That's a white metal ring, okay? And all these videos are about 5 or 6 seconds long. Here's video number 2. Sorry, I just hit video number 1 again. All right. Video 1, here's video number 2. This is another white metal ring. Now I'm going to thrill you with the riveting 3rd video, which looks exactly like the first 2 videos. So what was different about the 3 videos?
The heat transfer.
Okay, how many people didn't see the heat transfer? Excuse me, we don't use the word heat in this class. We only use the word thermal energy. How many people did not see the thermal energy transfer? Good. I wanted more of y'all to see that. It makes class more relevant. Okay, so this next video is actually going to show the thermal transfer. And what you'll do, watch this boric acid start to melt, okay? See, the thermal energy is transferring out ahead of the torch. Okay? Now, when we do that video again, only watch the thermal transfer. Don't look at the torch. When we get to the very end of it, we'll pull the torch off of it, and you'll see the thermal energy continue to transfer. Torch is gone. You see the thermal energy transfer up here? All right. So now, let's go back to the first video. And we're going to look at it from a different perspective. Okay? So now, when we show this again, I want you to watch how fast that thermal energy transfers down here, comes into this pair of tweezers, and hits that piece of boric acid, and just count it off in your head. And I haven't figured out how to move this thing where I don't have to keep it. All right. Did I hit one? All right, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 seconds it hit that boric acid. Okay? So, what is that ring made of?
Silver.
Anybody else? Platinum? White gold? Anybody don't know? Anybody that just had their hand up? Salesperson. Okay, now let's look at the next video. This is video number 2. Only watch the thermal transfer. Okay? Now when you watch it again, watch the thermal transfer not get into the tweezers. Watch it slow down about right there. So remember, on that first ring, within 4 seconds, we had heat traveling all the way up here, okay? On this one, in 7 or 8 seconds, the heat never got to the tweezers, okay? This is all important here in a minute. Number 3. And this one, it took me and Nick 20 times to get this video. Oh yeah, we're supposed to put our cell phones on vibrate. We have emergency teams in Columbia, South Carolina. They were checking to see if they got work here real quick. No. All right. So, did y'all see how slow the thermal transfer rate was on that? All right. How many people noticed that there's boric acid on the tweezers right here when we first started? Okay? This is the one that took us forever to try to get to keep the boric acid there. So now, remember on the first video, within 4 seconds, we had that heat crawling way up here. Okay? So now we're going to count how many seconds it takes to light the boric acid that we have down here. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It took 15 seconds for the heat to go from here to light a highly flammable liquid. Okay, so what was this ring?
Platinum.
Absolutely. So, one of the biggest issues that I see with bench jewelers, and one of the things I probably get the most calls for and people that have the most trouble, is everybody wants to treat the white metals like 14 karat yellow gold. 14 karat yellow gold has been what every jewelry school and every training thing in the world always trains you on: yellow gold or something similar like brass or bronze. And the white metals are not 14 karat yellow gold. All of the compounds that we use in the industry to repair, service, and manufacture jewelry, most of them are geared to 14 karat or 10 karat yellow gold. So bench jewelers have a tendency to use techniques for 14 karat yellow gold when they're working on white metals, and then they get a less than desirable result at the end of it. Okay? So, if you are going to size a silver ring, okay? Gonna have a ring here. Let's make it a big, fat, 10 millimeter sterling silver band that's got to go down a half a size. So nice, big, heavy ring. Now, how many people in here absolutely hate working on silver? Okay, good. And why do you hate it? Because it sucks. It doesn't work right. It doesn't solder correctly. The solder wants to jump from one side or the other or something to that effect. And we're going to go over why that happens. And one of my favorite things about teaching this class is the number of people that are sitting in the class going, boom, you know, that what I'm telling them, that there is no way that I have turned down silver for 30 years and it's that easy, that I'm doing that one thing wrong. But my favorite part about it is in about 2 weeks when you get that phone call from somebody like going, I'm sorry, you're right, it really is. Okay, so we're gonna have this ring held in a pair of tweezers right here. Okay, we solder it right here. So now, there's two physics that are working against you in this. And first and foremost is, or working for you or against you, they're working against each other. Heat goes to the coldest point. Okay? Always. So, I kind of crack up when I hear people with lasers that talk about, oh, I always just do silver with my laser. It doesn't affect me. And I'm like, if you think you can spend $22,000 and bypass physics, you were wrong. Because if you use your laser to work on a sterling silver ring, you do not turn the power down. You crank the power up. Because it doesn't matter what method you are using to transfer thermal energy. On a silver ring, it's going to go from right there to right there on a laser faster than it does with a torch. But it's still going there, okay? So, heat's going to go to the coldest point. That says coldest if it looks like goldest. Okay, so your heat's going to go to the coldest point. So, if I want to solder this right here, okay, and I want to control my heat right here, and I put a torch right here, where's my heat in 4 seconds?
Tweezers.
My heat's down here, okay? So now I have completely lost all my thermal control right there. That what I was trying to do, because in order to do work with using thermal energy, which is a torch, okay? In order to do work with thermal energy, you have to control the thermal energy. And if you're trying to do work here, and your thermal energy is down here, and you're trying to control the thermal energy up here, your silver is not going to solder. Okay? So, how do we solder that ring?
Cut it?
At the bottom.
Cut it?
No, we've already cut it. Now we gotta put it back together. Now we've basically got to the point of no return where you have to fix this and spend 12 or 15 hours cussing and throwing things and finally showing up at my shop going, will you fix this for me? And then like 2 seconds later, I'll fix it. And I remember my friend Scott Isaacs is always like, how did you do that? And I'm like, well, I wasn't mad at it, you know? Okay. So if I'm gonna solder a ring up here and it's sterling silver, I'm starting down here, okay? If heat is going to go to the coldest point, if thermal energy is going to go to the coldest point, and I wanna control the thermal energy right in this area, because I don't want to control it down here. I'm not doing work down here. If I want to control the thermal energy up here, I want to make this the coldest point of the ring, don't I? Because that's where I need to control it, and that's where my heat's going to go. So I am going to start, and I'm going to heat this section of the ring up. And then I'm going to heat it some more. I'm going to get those tweezers good and hot, because I already know the heat's going there. Okay, we just saw it, and it's going there quick. Okay, quicker than you think. And all that thing when people think about like YouTube videos, like, well, you just did that in 2 seconds. I bet me and Nick spent a week trying to get these videos to really show that thermal energy, because it just doesn't do it. You boric acid it and do it, and it just kind of, you can't get it on film. So I'm going to start right here, okay? Then I'm going to bring my heat up to here, and I'm going to heat these sides up. So then, when I'm getting ready to flow my solder up here, now, where is the least thermal energy in the entire ring? Because I have already worn this out with heat. That right there is the area with the least amount of thermal energy. So when I put my torch in there to try to do some work and control my heat right in there, where is my heat gonna stay?
There.
It's gonna stay right there. So, what is the problem with that? Our opposing physics to this is solder goes to the hottest point. Not every now and then, not every other Thursday or twice, on Wednesdays or whatever, like a church schedule. Heat goes to the coldest point every single time. Solder goes to the hottest point every single time. Okay, so now, I have now made this the hottest point of my ring. Then I'm going to come up here, I'm going to put my ball of solder right up here. Got my solder pick, I get it all heated, get everything ready, I'm ready to solder this right here. I put my solder on the top of that solder joint right there. Now, the hottest point of my ring is down here. How do I make that solder just go through that joint just clean and pretty, evenly on both sides?
The flame underneath.
Yeah, and we'll have a video where I'll show you this. And it used to be, I don't know, probably 15 years ago, we could come into these conferences and bring bench setups, and we could actually sit here and do it live, but then fire marshals across the country kind of started banning open flames on carpeting with boric acid and stuff like that. But so, what I'm gonna do is we are going to, what video is that? That was for another conference. All right, that's a ring we're getting ready to work on. Is this it?
Let's get this hot, because we want to solder the top of this, so we want the top of this to be the coldest point on this ring.
All right, let me stop this. All right, what I did, this is a ring, let me pass this around. All right. This ring is white gold, and I did the soldering technique on this white gold ring because I needed the white gold ring for a little other part of this. But what I did, all right, you have a white gold ring, big, heavy, wide, something like this, and what I did was I took this signet ring and I sawed it in half, okay? Then I soldered it back together. Who thinks I got a line across there when you tried to polish it with that solder joint in there? I did, and I'm gonna show it to you, because I purposely put a line in there, that when you're dealing with something, and that's the part of here where we get to the fun part about the movement of metals at the molecular level. But the technique I used on soldering this ring, so when you see this and it's not a silver ring, it's me cutting through the top of a signet ring to purposely destroy it, but watch the soldering technique. And one thing to remember, that when I leave here, I'm not gonna go home and then go to another conference somewhere and speak or whatever. I have work tomorrow, that I'm gonna be at my bench, basically doing this tomorrow and the next day and the next day. This is what I do full time every day. And, coming to things like this is just kind of fun. It gets you out, but, all right. So, watch this.
Okay, so this is good and hot. So now I'm gonna flex this joint.
Yes, I could have flexed it before, but.
I'm gonna take my 14 karat white gold solder. Now, I'm gonna get this whole plate hot.
Now, this is key. Watch what's happening here. Right here.
Go ahead and hit these others.
I went back and hit that thermal energy again down there.
Now, when that solder flows, I'm coming under here to drop through. Now I want to draw it to the ends, like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to fill these two holes. And I'm going to fill them with solder. Well,
That. I ended up not doing that. It's too big of a pain in the butt. Okay, so now, let's look at this. So now, what I'm doing here is I am heating those tweezers up. And if you look across the top right here, you can see where my seam is that I'm putting in there. Yeah, my mouse works up there. Okay, so now I'm gonna heat this, I'm gonna heat those tweezers. And like I say, I don't do this every now and then, like when I'm soldering something like this. If you're soldering like a little 1/2 carat engagement ring down a 1/2 a size, thermal energy doesn't really come in and hit you as hard. But you getting something big silver rings and stuff like that, it's going to. So now,
work on our thermal control.
see, thermal control. I'm getting that good and hot.
Let's get this hot.
Now, when I go over to get my solder, I'm
We
gonna
want to
lose
solder the
some
top of
thermal
this.
energy.
So we want the top of this to be the coldest point on this ring. Okay, so this is good and hot. So now I'm going to flex this joint. I'm going to take my 14 karat white gold solder.
So now I've lost thermal energy down
I'm
here.
going to get this whole plate hot.
Not a lot, but some.
Just go ahead and hit these others.
See there, I'm gonna go ahead and bring
Now,
the
the
thermal
solder's
energy
about
up.
to flow. Now, when that solder flows, I'm coming under here to drop through.
Now, what I'm gonna do is, because solder flows to the hottest point, and I put my solder on the center of the ring, okay? So now that the solder's come through that joint, now I want my solder to come out to the ends. So I'm gonna actually put my torch out on the ends, because I already know that I have completely controlled this thermal energy down here. I've now got total control of this area up here. Now I can make that solder do whatever I want. When I re-tip, sometimes if I get the solder like on the wrong side of a tip or whatever, I can take my torch on the other side and literally walk that solder across that prong, if you can control your thermal energy. So,
I want to draw it to the ends, like that. Now what I'm gonna do,
and I didn't do that, because as you can see, the hole's in the top of the ring. All right, now, how many people have both of these on your bench? How many people use both of those on your bench on a daily basis? I do too. Okay, so, now, one of the things that you have to understand about this work, okay, when we're dealing with the white metals, okay, that, and it doesn't matter which is which, because I can't remember. I meant to look it up and I forgot. But one of the metals that you work with wants more oxygen when you solder. One of the metals that you work with wants less oxygen when you solder, okay? One of the fluxes generates oxygen. One of the fluxes removes oxygen, okay? So if you are soldering on a ring that wants no oxygen in order for that solder to flow, and you put an oxygen generating flux on that and supercharge the oxygen, your solder's not gonna flow correctly, or it's gonna jump to one side or the other, or it's not gonna fill the joint correctly. So, sterling silver wants this. Way back, back when I'd probably just been in the business probably a year out of school, or on the bench for about a year, and I'd been working in this shop, and I was the only jeweler he'd ever had. He bought the equipment, we built a shop. All of a sudden, I'm like a trade shop jeweler right out of school. And what was funny was I would cut my hands every day. And so this is like in the early 80s, in the disco era, when they had like the big glitter balls and everybody went to the discos and stuff, that at the end of the day, when I would shower, all 10 of my fingers had cuts all over them. And the only Band-Aids that I could use that were heavy enough to handle it were these bright white big canvas Band-Aids. So I would get home at night and tear, because my hands were just black and gross. So I would tear those bandages off, and I would have literally 10 bright white Band-Aids on all 10 fingers. And people thought it was like a Michael Jackson one glove thing, but it was like, I had big slices and throat drill bits in my fingers and stuff. But when we would go out to the discos at night, it was always cool, because I literally had 10 bright white fingers. But then the next day, they could handle the rigors of like the polishing and everything. But, so I was at that shop for about a year and a half, and I got offered a job at another shop. And when I go in there, the first thing he does is hands me a box of silver repairs. And the first thing I'm thinking is like, oh crap, because I hate silver repairs. So I start soldering it, and probably within about the first 10 minutes, he's like going, what are you doing that for? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, why are you using green flux on silver? It doesn't work. I'm like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. And he hands me this, he goes, use this. And so I went, what is that? He goes, just use it. And I started using this on silver. First thing I did, and because I already knew the thermal control and the thermal energy, and all of a sudden, my first ring that I soldered, that solder just went, whew. I was like, wow, it's never happened before to me. And so, silver, gold, every time. Now, when you, like I said, we gotta cover 2 hours and an hour here. So now, let's skip over to polishing, okay? When you take a big, like that white gold ring, where is it? Okay, did everybody see the seam across it? So basically what I did, I sliced this perfectly good ring in half, and then I soldered it in half, and then I polished it, and as I polished it, it drew a seam that you can just see it, especially, you know, sometimes a customer wouldn't see it, but if you work in a jewelry store, you saw it. You know, if you've ever worked on a bench, you've seen it. So if you're going to size a white gold ring, like a big 10mm white gold wedding band, you're gonna size it down a half a size or a size, you put it together and you polish it, there's that seam you can't get out, okay? Anybody ever had that problem? Anybody wanna know how to solve that problem and never have it again?
Woohoo.
So, all right, any questions on thermal transfer?
Yes, quickly.
Sure.
So you've got a gigantic sterling silver ring with turquoise in it, and you have to do some heat sink, or I mean, heat shield on it.
Well, my heat shield, by the way, is called Magic Baby Poo. Big-
I've seen your post on it, yeah.
Yeah, because it literally looks like Magic Baby Poo. And back when we could like bring
Ceiling
torches and
tiles?
stuff.
Is that what you use?
Yeah,
Ceiling tiles?
well, that's what I use now. I used to use something else, but that product isn't available. But it literally looks like something you'd see in a baby's diaper. So when we used to do these conferences where we could actually bring a bench and a torch in, we'd always leave some like somewhere where the person cleaning it up would have to see it. Because we thought we were funny. But to do that, you literally have to eliminate everything below that, okay? That you know that heat's going down there. So that's where I put a casting torch on, or a casting tip on my torch, and just overpower it in and out. But the hardest part about doing that with when you're using a heat sink and you're having to blast heat with it, because when you do something like that, you don't like to quench it. You know, it's just a natural joy, you don't quench. But when you use a heat sink and you overheat it and you blast it, because you know where your heat's going, so now you have to make sure you have enough thermal energy in that area to do the work. But if you then take your torch away, that thermal energy's still crawling down. So as soon as that solder flows, you lay that ring over and you quench it immediately, because you have to stop the thermal energy transfer as fast as you can. Otherwise, it's gonna crawl down. So that's the hardest part about doing it, is getting used to like laying it over. All right, so we're gonna solder this ring on the bottom. 10mm white gold wedding band, we just sized down, okay? Now, when we size this and then we polish it, all of a sudden you have a line that comes up. So you go back and you do your thing again, and then you polish it again, and then that line comes up. So you cut it again, you resolder it, you do all of your stuff, you polish it again, that line comes back up. So there is a very, very specific reason why that does that. That when it comes to refinishing jewelry, there are two methods that you can use to achieve a high polish. There is the movement of metal at the molecular level, which is called burnishing. Tripoli is a burnishing compound. Rouge is a burnishing compound, okay? So what they do, if you look at any piece of metal what are those high-powered microscopes, what are they called?
Electron?
Yeah, electron microscope. You look at a high polished piece of metal under an electron microscope, and it's gonna look like that, okay? So if you take a ring and you solder it, you file it, you can literally see the file marks in it. So if you were to look at a ring under a microscope that you just filed it, you would see that. Those are the file marks, okay? So then what do? You sand your file marks out, okay? So basically you come in here with a file or sandpaper, and then you knock those down a little bit, okay? Then when you switch over, now let's only talk about 14 karat yellow gold, because that's what all of our compounds are designed to work on. So when I solder a ring, I'll solder it, I'll file it, I'll sand it with 320, I'll go to Tripoli, I'll go to Rouge, okay? So let's pretend this ring, 14 karat yellow gold, and somebody has a crest, a family crest engraved on it. and you've got a new person working in the shop who says, oh, that's kind of scratched up, let me polish it. She gets on it with Triple E, okay? And she spends about 10 minutes with Triple E. Where's what happened to the monogram? Okay, where is it?
On the wheel.
Now it's burnished, buried.
Mhm. Burnishing does not technically remove metal. Burnishing moves metal. Burnishing is the movement of metal at the molecular level in these applications that we're talking about. Now, I'm not dumb enough to take my polishing dust and throw it in the trash, but I personally don't think there's anything in it, you know? That when I finish polishing a ring, do you ever look at like when I sand a ring and file a ring, I look at my tray, I see gold dust. You look at your polishing dust, have you ever seen anything shiny or sparkly in it? No. Okay, granted, there may be some in there, so I am gonna send it to the refiner with everything else, but burnishing does not remove metal, burnishing moves it. So your family crest is still there, but burnishing moves metal from the high spots to the low spots, okay? So, the thing that you've got to understand about white metals and yellow metals, that yellow gold and yellow gold solder, okay? That they burnish at the same rate. Okay? That is a very important point. I'm gonna need that in a second, you'll see why. All right, so yellow gold solder move at the exact same rate, okay? So why is that important? Is because white gold and white gold solder move differently. "14 karat white gold, 14 karat white gold solder move at different rates." So when you're polishing that ring, when I polish this ring, okay, there's a little dip there where that line is. That metal is not on my polishing wheel. That metal is just over here on the side. It's still on the ring, okay? So when you have two different compounds that move at different rates, you're not going to solve that with burnishing. So you have two methods to achieve a polish. You can either achieve a polish by moving metal, which is burnishing, which is Triple E, Ruse, and there's a million compounds, you know, whatever you like that works for you, stick with it if it works for you. But when it comes to white metals, I don't achieve a polish by moving metal, I achieve a polish by removing metal, okay? So, here's how we're gonna achieve that.
So you can get the crust back.
No, crest is gone. No, excuse me, the crest never went anywhere, the crest is still there.
Right, can you get it back though?
Oh, no.
Oh.
It's completely ruined. You know, it's got rid of the hand engraver and all that. We used to have this girl way back, you know, in the 80s that I finally convinced the owner of the store to like, don't let her polish jewelry. Because she would go back in there, the polisher, and you would all of a sudden, you would like, the lights of the building would dim down. And she like lift her up on her feet where she's jamming it in there and you could hear that motor like tax and the lights come down and, you know, but she ruined a crest like that one day. And, okay, but, so, 14 karat yellow gold. When I do 14 karat yellow gold, I solder it, I file it, sand it with 320, go to Triple E, go to Ruse, go to the ultrasonic, go to the cash register, okay? With 14 karat white gold, I do it completely different. With platinum, I do it even completely more different than that, okay? And I do it completely different every single time, okay? So, you start with a metal that looks like that after you've gone to 320, okay? With yellow gold, Triple E will take care of that all day long and turn it smooth. And it will basically move this to here, this a little up to here, this down to here, but it will give you a nice polish, okay? With white gold does not burnish, platinum does not burnish even more than white gold doesn't burnish. The metal doesn't move. And with white gold, it has to do with the alloys. It's not that the white gold itself doesn't burnish, it's the alloys that are mixed in with the white gold that don't burnish and don't move, okay? So, how do you achieve a polish, especially when your metals are moving at different rates? Your solders and your host metal are moving at different rates. So what I'm gonna do, as soon as on a white gold ring, I'm gonna go from 320, I'm then gonna take this to 600, okay? And then that is going to look a whole lot more like this, okay? Then when I finish with that, I'm then, with white gold, a lot of times I'll go 320, 600, Triple E Rouge. Unless it's something really big like this here, where I'm gonna have to do a lot of polishing, I'm gonna go from 600 to 1500. And then 1500 is a whole lot more like this, okay? So, how does removing versus moving work? What we're gonna do here. All right, what I did with this ring, I took this ring, I soldered it, I 320'd it, I triple E'd it, I rouged it, I got a line. So now, let's take it back to 320. Okay, now, we don't need to pass it around because we're short on time, but y'all know what a ring that's been sanded with 320 looks like, okay? Now, my line is gone. Why? Because white gold and white gold solder, even though they move at different rates, they remove at the exact same rate. So now, granted, metal did end up. Now, see, I will send this to the refiner when it's full because I can see white gold there. But, so now I've got this ring to 320 and now the line is completely gone. And so many jewelers' natural propensity is to then go to the triple E wheel and start trying to achieve a polish by moving metal. We're not gonna do that. We're gonna jump up to 600 sandpaper, okay? And some people will say, yeah, but you're filing somebody's ring away. At 600, you're not moving a bunch. You're not removing a lot of metal. I have used this ring and these pieces of sandpaper for the last probably 5 or 6 times I've done this class, and like, that's how much I've sanded off of this ring 5 or 6 times, okay? But now, at 600, it's not as dull as it was. It doesn't have a shine on it yet, but it's kind of getting there. So, let's bump this up to 1500, okay? Who's skeptical? Because whoever's skeptical has to be the one to look at it here, because I don't have time to pass it around to the whole room. Tag, you're it. You just look skeptical, and you're close.
Actually, I work up front. I thought it would just be fun to learn.
Well, good, I'm gonna show you something you didn't know yet. Okay, so now, well, it had to be a line. Now can you see it start to achieve a light polish? Granted, it's not there yet, but there's no line anymore. So did I remove some metal? I mean, little. You couldn't tell it on a penny weight scale. Okay, so now what are we gonna do? We're gonna step it up to 2000.